stuff. We have three different applications besides the prime application, and we need to discuss those and what's going to happen tonight a little bit with prime or Durkee Street or whatever you want to call it. So I think first it's important that we go to the applications we have, and let me get to, that's the findings. I'm trying to, you would send us a bunch of an email, Shalice, with all the different stuff, and we have three applications. I'm assuming everybody has looked at them. And we got other accessory information besides for 12 Point View Terrace, for 76 Park, and for Town Mill Road, we had some hard copy stuff. So I want to talk about them first. The first one, let me go to the agenda. Okay, so I think we'll take these in the order of the agenda. There's no reason to change those three, and we are going to have prime last. The first one is 2240 Chris Buskey, special use permit for a 7.5-foot fence inside and rear yards. Joe, this qualifies completely, right? There's no issues with where he wants to put it. It's a special use permit.
That's the 76 Park
Chris
Avenue?
Buskey. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. It does have to meet the 5 criteria. I just want people to remember. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about this one? I mean, it's pretty, we've been doing these lately, these fences in the rear and side yard. And Joe, did they put the stuff, they had a fence, they added to it?
Yeah, it's really the top decorative lattice part that kicks it over the into the threshold of needing a special use permit.
Right, but they're allowed to do it. So in this case, they're not asking for variance.
Right.
Does it go into the front yard setback on Leonard Ave?
No, it's behind the house. And
but they're a corner lot.
Yeah, but it does not project into the front yard.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is Nikun, I'm not sure how you say that, Nikun Patel. Do you know if that is a man or woman, Joe?
That is
no.
a male. That is a male. You can call him Nick.
What is it?
Nick. It's a man.
Okay. And is it, how do you say it?
I don't know how to pronounce the full name. I just call him Nick. That's how he refers to himself when I've spoken to him.
All right. I'm wondering if I'll see what I can call him. But anyway, he has an 8-inch vinyl fence in the front yard, an 8-foot rather vinyl fence. I mean, it's not something I've seen us approve very much, and especially their concerns. It's not in the triangle though, correct, Joe?
No.
Back further. But
that's my understanding, yes.
Share a picture if you like. I could share a picture. I said I could share a picture if you like.
Yeah. And that's where that fence, it's where that fence is.
That's my understanding, yes.
And if you look at the aerial photograph in the packet, it comes down, and then if you look also at his drawings, which are sort of what it is, you know, they're kind of generic. He is especially disregarding the furthest, the end drawing, because that's not accurate. Maybe it is sort of, I guess. I guess that's the property line, or I'm not sure what those other are. So that, it is sort of accurate. It shows that fence, just doesn't show how much. But Joe, it is a front yard. He's allowed, he could have, can I assume that he could have it 8 feet by, which he didn't apply for, special use permit for part of it? Is that correct?
Yeah, whatever's considered not in the front yard, which would be the first 25 feet of the property off of Autumn Drive right there.
Okay, so if I look at I want to look at the last drawing is what I'm looking at, Kyle. That shows Autumn Drive and Tom Miller Road. But while Kyle's trying to get that, he can have a 4-foot fence in the front, correct, Joe?
Yes,
And then, but actually, once he went back 25 feet from the property line, which let's say it's 15 feet of fence around the corner, he could then go to 8 feet with a special use permit, correct?
that's right.
And then when he comes back down the other side heading towards Tom Miller Road, that is a side yard. So that could that all be 8 feet?
I believe that the language says side or the rear, but I'll confirm.
Say it again, Joe, I didn't hear you.
I think the language says side or rear, but I'll confirm.
Right. So what I'm saying is that he could, between his house and the neighbor, and along that side yard, because that is a side yard, it's not one of the two front yards, and all along I guess it depends what he's calling the front yard. If he picks Tom Miller as the front yard, then Autumn Drive would be the side yard. Is that correct?
Yes,
But he couldn't have an 8-foot fence there because it's also a front yard.
that's right. And the way it reads is side or the rear. So side or the rear, it can get a special use permit for an 8-foot fence.
So could he have, my question is then, what parts would be covered for sure with a special use permit? The one between him and his neighbor, and the
Yes.
and the one on the back, and the one on the back, up to
That's right.
25 feet away, up to 25 feet from the property line, at which point he would have to drop to 4 feet.
Exactly.
Do we know where 25 feet is relative to the house on
No.
Autumn Drive?
I don't know exact. Try and,
And the additional question is, he's got that shed there that actually is closer to Autumn Drive than the house.
yes,
Which if that's front yard, it shouldn't be there, correct?
it shouldn't be there, but I don't know how long that's been there. So that could be a pre-existing condition.
It doesn't look like, well, it's hard to say, there's no sidewalk, so the property line is probably partway under the grass, right, Joe?
Yeah, I'm trying to look that up on satellite image, but yeah, definitely the property
Okay.
line the property line is likely 12 or 15 feet from the curb.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it looks to me like he can't, it's certainly not gonna be, it's gonna be pretty hard to grant an 8-foot fence on Autumn Drive when 4 is allowed. And then I would say partway back on between him and his neighbor on the back of his house and the neighbor on Autumn Drive, I guess you could put one, right? 25 feet from the property line.
That's right. The house is 20 feet from the curb. So I would guess that the property line is about 10 feet. So the house is 10 feet from the property line.
Right. So he could put a 4-foot fence coming off the house. It's still on his property because it jogs out where the chain link is would have to stay 4 feet. And then once you got 25 feet back, which I'm going to say is another 15 or 16 feet back, or more actually, probably, right? Because we're coming in out 4 feet or so.
Yeah, that's about right.
But anyway, wherever 25 feet is in the back, he could do that. And all the rest of the fencing in 8 foot with a special use permit, correct?
That's right. Yep, you got it exactly.
But he would have to apply for a special use permit?
He has applied for, he initially applied for a special use permit because my understanding is he may have gotten the wrong information from my office. So he applied for a special use permit initially. I realized he needed a variance for the front portion closest to Autumn Drive, so we had him apply for an area variance.
Okay, so we may not be able to fully settle it tonight because it wasn't even advertised for a special use permit, correct?
It was advertised for an area variance. My understanding is you could grant him an area variance for that portion that you would have given him a special use permit for.
I see, right. Does that make sense to everybody? Scott?
No, I don't quite understand why we can grant an area variance when a special use permit's required.
It's not required, it's allowed.
Right.
Otherwise, he can come back and apply for the special use permit. The point would be to get him out of here. He's going to be granted the special use permit as a matter of right for those, the one area of the fence and most of the back area. But otherwise, those fences could be 6 feet anyway. So we can discuss it and just see what we want to do. Okay. And the third one is Julie Dolan, 12 Point View Terrace. Joe and I discussed this a little bit earlier, but basically, this is an existing garage that they're going to put a second floor on. And it's not changing the footprint whatsoever. It's part of the house. It'd just be like if you had a house, putting an addition on any part of the house, whether it's a garage or not, because it's an attached garage, it's part of the house. And again, it's not even cantilevered at the top or anything. It's not getting any closer. And we did get a correspondence from the neighbor, her father, indicating that he didn't have a problem with 2 bedrooms on the second floor. But do people have questions about this one at all? No, I mean, I think it's pretty simple. It has no, it is interesting that if there was any, quote, devaluing of the property next door, it's owned by her father. I don't think you can devalue property on Point View Terrace anyway, frankly, but I don't think it does, and as the only neighbor, and certainly at some point, if he goes to sell the neighbor, the father, goes to sell it, then he would bear the consequences of the house being taller next door, I assume. So I didn't have any issue with it, but does anybody have questions about it, or? No? Okay. And I don't know, I think I'm gonna be pretty tired after these three, and I might want to adjourn. I don't know, I'm thinking that. What do you think, people? Anyway, we will be, it's only 6:46, so we're doing good. We will be doing these three and then waiting for Kelly. We can discuss Prime a little bit now. She's not here. I don't think that our discussion about it in general is gonna be a problem because, do you, Corey? Because she's not here and she's gonna be voting on it, the pre-meeting. We've been through so much of this stuff constantly. Okay, so we've talked about doing a resolution for the findings. We have not done a resolution yet for the SUPs. I had some ideas and thoughts that I sent out. And I know that there were discussions relative to the same findings approval at the planning board, and that they postponed after that. And I guess the first thing is going to be to talk about the findings. I have some questions still for Prime myself. I think other people might. We've had some correspondence. We're now at the point of this 62-day voting limit. Actually, we're not. I think it's next Monday. It's the 22nd, I believe, if I'm correct.
Yeah, Ron.
Do you know? Yeah.
To that point, I want to update the board that I received a telephone call from Charlie Gottlieb over the weekend, and we discussed the issue very briefly about the 62-day time period. His client is not, and I'll let him speak for his client if he's given an opportunity, but I'm relaying to you our conversation. He indicated that his client is understanding that this is difficult and would agree to a reasonable extension of the zoning board's time to render its determination. But they would ask that, to the extent a extension is required, that the board consider scheduling a special meeting as opposed to waiting until your next regularly scheduled meeting. So I wanted to relay that to the board, that I received that communication.
Okay.
From Charlie.
That's good. That's good to know, so we don't have to worry about some, frankly, adversarial tone creeping into our discussion, I would say. I don't know how people feel about a special meeting, and we'd have to poll the board to talk about when that could be and what it could, what has to be done when. I think that we have a lot to do. I do have, I had made a lot of comments. I spent quite a bit of time going through the findings. And of course, the findings that we have, this final, I think it's February 20th, correct me if I'm wrong, final findings, does not have a whole bunch of appendixes, doesn't have a bunch of stuff. It just says, here's the information. And so I went through, as we discussed that I might, and looked at parts of the findings that I found might have changed, and or because the more something has changed, or we've got new information since the findings were done and accepted by the council, or where I found, and I'm not sure that everybody's on every side is going to agree with me necessarily, but where I found areas that may not have received emphasis, specifically and especially about the concept of variations and the ability of the planning board to allow variations and how that affected several aspects, including mostly parking and setbacks. I mean, one of the things we need to understand is that there's not a height variation here as an example. So when I went through this, but there is a height criteria. There is something to say about the height and the general character of the neighborhood, just like one of the 5 criteria is adequate parking. And we're getting all this information. I got a letter today, I think we all did, right, from Matt Fuller saying that which I didn't think I was, but and Charlie were telling the board that we couldn't consider parking. And I'm not sure whether we can or can't, but what I can tell you is that first and foremost, as we're working on this finding and doing our own findings, I think we have to be careful, and this is what I tried to do, and we can start taking stuff out of many of my suggestions, but I went through and everything. If we're going to approve the findings with the following exclusions or conditions or whatever, that's what I tried to do, so that parts of the findings, and correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, or anybody, parts of the findings that we find acceptable, we aren't talking about and reissuing it. What we're also not doing, though, is just making big general statements about suitability of stuff or big general statements about pandemics or anything like that. We pared it down, and then I brought it back up to full length, I think. But I think that, and some of my wording may not be correct. So I think that we need to be pretty careful with, and I'm concerned because I watched some of the planning board discussion about their findings where they were, and I promise that I will not use the word frosting, which I understand upset people, except just now. But I will tell you that I think that we need to be careful and go through this and make sure that what we're saying and what we're agreeing to this is about the findings first, and then afterwards we can talk about, just because we find there may be, and I don't know, that was one of my questions. I didn't say, in most instances, did not say will or won't have an adverse impact. I said may have an adverse impact. And I don't know if that's allowed or not allowed, but I did it. I don't know if we can put that in our thing because I don't know, because if not, I would change it from may to will have an adverse impact. And I tried not to do that. I mostly what I was saying is that stuff, and I know you've all read it, and stuff has changed. The world has changed, and we have new information, as an example, about the height. We have a pretty good idea now how different in height this building is to other buildings. Does that mean that they should go to a 3 or 4 story building? That's not necessarily our purview. What is, though, is that we talk about how that height affects the neighborhood around it, just like the parking does affect it. So I did get comments back. I sent this out individually so people would understand it a little bit, just as food for thought. But I think that we need to go through the findings tonight. I don't know how long that's going to take. It'd be very nice if we could do this and get to a finding that we agree to. I think we also want to talk to Prime a little bit about maybe some compromise or some things that are mentioned in the findings, in my discussions in the findings, specifically about setbacks and parking, and see if there's a spirit of compromise, as an example, to adjust the setbacks. And I thought reasons why they were not addressed properly necessarily in the GEIS. And I understand that we were supposed to be, and we're a part of that process. I would dare say that none of us has ever done one. Nobody. I don't even know if Dean, that you've done one or not before this, but the fact of the matter is, not to say anybody was wrong or right, but what I can tell you is I don't know as we understood our responsibilities and our opportunities during the GEIS reviews. And I think I always felt that we could do our own findings, and if we differed, that we could bring those up. So I'm doing it as best I think that I can. You know, this is not, as we all know, easy at all. This is I would dare say that no matter how we act and what we do, somebody's gonna be upset. So go ahead, Kat.
Yeah, I just wanted to get Corey's input on anything that you worked on as far as on your own on the draft findings and any other thoughts you might have before we go into the full meeting. We only have a few minutes left of the pre-meeting. So, I mean, in my own, I didn't get a lot of time, honestly, to look through your draft. And I'm not, even to the extent I agree with any of it, I'm a little concerned that we are varying from the findings, and I'm not sure is allowed. So, I mean, we need to make our own findings, but again, I think there needs to be support in the record for it. So I don't know if, and I know Corey has had a busy agenda, so I'm not sure to what extent he was able to review it, but I just want to get his input on it.
Thanks, Kathy. How are you feeling, by the way? You on the mend? All right, good. So, yeah, I did review some draft findings that Ron prepared. I thought, Ron, you've clearly done your homework, and it shows in the level of detail that you put into the draft that you prepared and circulated to the members. There's definitely some mechanical and some technical modifications that I would suggest, especially as it relates to sections where you've included potential mitigation measures. The seeker record is closed, as you know, and to the extent that you cannot support a positive finding for a particular criteria, it's not exactly the vehicle in the finding statement for you to propose mitigation to the applicant at this point. That said, if you feel that the seeker record can't support your finding, then that's what you say in the finding statement. That, whatever the deficiency was, whatever wasn't supported, whatever causes you not to be able to make that conclusion. I think that the bones are there, but there's some reworking of it from a technical perspective that will drastically improve the thought process and the good work that went into what you've done. A quick clarification, and I know we're coming up on 7 o'clock. The lead agency has made findings. You are not obligated to agree with this lead agency's findings. You are obligated to make findings. To the extent you agree with any of the lead agency's findings as a board, you can adopt those findings. To the extent you disagree, you will provide the evidence, the support that you find in the seeker record for your conclusion. There was also a draft positive finding statement that was prepared, presumably by the city, by the applicant. I'm not clear who prepared that document, but you were provided with a positive finding statement where somebody has already gone through and given you their opinion about the seeker record vis-a-vis the special use permits that you're being asked to consider. So you don't have to agree or disagree with those draft findings that were prepared for you, but to the extent that you do to any of them, you could adopt them as your own findings. And then finally, as Ron has done, he has taken the time and effort, and it shows, to prepare a set of draft findings for the board's consideration, for you to individually agree or disagree with, modify, change, amend, adopt. And that's what this deliberative process is for you to kick these things around, discuss them, research them further, as Ron stated, get additional information from the applicant to the extent that you want to do that for them, to put additional information into that review. So I just wanted you to be clear on what your obligations are. Ron, I commend you. You've done good work, and I think it's now a great opportunity for the board in an open and in an open meeting and in front of the public to review, discuss, deliberate, and then to the extent that you all make conclusions from this, you can direct me to help you memorialize them, as long as you as a body have decided in what direction you want to go on any particular finding, and I am here to help you with that. So if you come to agreements on any particular finding that you want, me to help you draft, that's why I'm here.
Okay, so let me ask this procedurally, and I guess we got to go in a minute, right? Procedurally, this evening, we could, as an example, go through the points that I brought up as part of the proceedings for the draft, that I'm concerned about for our findings regarding the GEIS, and then prepare one after this evening memorializing those points that we agree on.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. All right, do we have to go to the other meeting now then? At 7 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll discuss this some more in the meeting, and this is a pre-meeting, there's no secrets. It doesn't matter if we discuss it here or there, correct? Is that anybody? Right, okay. So now we're gonna get out of this meeting and go to the other meeting, and I have to phone in my phone and everything, right? Okay. See everybody there then.